The stars bled slowly across the void, their light stretched thin by the dying breath of the galaxy. Once, this quadrant of the heavens was alive with color, solar flares that danced like banners, nebulae pulsing in the hues of creation. Now, everything was dim. Even the light of Ibraish, the ancient craft world, had grown sickly and pale, its once radiant domes now whispering with fractures that spidered through crystal walls. The webway trembled in silence. The Farseers said it was the echo of the end, the murmur of souls too tired to dream. Kellyanth stood in the upper galleries, gazing through the glass veins of the dome of sighs. The void beyond was choked with dust, the remnants of 1,000 forgotten wars. He could almost hear the universe inhaling, drawing breath before the scream to come. The skein of fate shimmered faintly before him, each thread a possibility, each one another death. Beneath his hands, the crystal balustrade felt cold, as if the craft world itself were withdrawing its warmth, unwilling to believe in survival. His mind drifted through the whispers of the infinity circuit, the countless spirits that murmured within Ibraish's heart. They did not speak in words, but in impressions, regret, nostalgia, sorrow older than suns. He envied them, their stillness. Immortality was no gift to those who remembered everything. Time stretched behind him like a wound that would not close, and all his foresight only told him that the wound would never heal. The first vision came unbidden, a swarm, the color of darkness itself, moving like liquid hunger through the stars. The Tyranids. Their shadows smothered the psychic ether, muting even the wails of the dead. Kellyanth saw their path, through orc empires, human sectors, into the void where Ibraish drifted. There was no stopping them, not in the old ways. The monkey would die screaming, but even the Eldar would not escape. The swarm was not evil. It was the universe reclaiming itself, nature cleansing corruption. But Kellyanth had seen too many endings. He refused another. Below the gallery, the great halls of the seer conclaves flickered with faint light as other Farseers communed with the infinite. Their meditations rose like soft thunder, harmonies of fear. He could feel them pressing against his mind, each a thread in the psychic loom that once shaped destiny. Yet now, every thread frayed, every future ended in ash. He closed his eyes and let his spirit wander the skein, tracing the strands with trembling thought. So many paths, so many deaths, yet one shimmered differently, like a wound glowing with strange light. It was a thread that smelled of deception, of hunger turned aside. If he could turn the Tyranids, guide their course, he might carve one thin corridor through annihilation. He might save Ibraish, or doom it more completely. The whisper of the spirits grew louder, accusing, pleading. "You would play the gods again," they murmured. "Have you learned nothing from the fool?" He ignored them. The gods were dead, or worse. The universe belonged now to those who dared to move in their absence. He turned from the viewport. Behind him stood Medre, her spirit stones gleaming dimly in the half-light. She was always quiet when she entered, her step soft as the sigh of the craft world itself. "You saw it again," she said. It was not a question. "I see it every time I close my eyes," he replied. "The swarm is near, perhaps nearer than we think." She studied him, eyes deep as obsidian pools. "And you think you can outwit hunger?" Kellyanth smiled faintly, though it felt like a wound pulling open. "Hunger is simple. It follows scent, instinct, rhythm. Even hunger can be turned aside if it believes it has found something richer." Medre's expression flickered. "And what would you feed it, Kellyanth? Whose worlds will burn so that ours may not?" The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. The hum of the crystal walls pressed inward. He looked down to the infinity circuit's glow far below, millions of souls dreaming in their glass tombs. The galaxy has fed on us for millennia, he said softly. Perhaps it is time we let it taste its own cruelty. Her hand trembled slightly. That is not the Eldar way. The Eldar way, he murmured, is extinction by ceremony. I have no patience for dying beautifully. Outside, the void thundered with a slow pulse, the echo of distant war. Even through the psychic mists, the dying of worlds could be felt like waves breaking against a shore. Kelianth felt each collapse as a weight on his chest. How many civilizations had already vanished in silence? How many bright minds snuffed out, never remembered? Immortality, he thought, was not eternal life. It was eternal witnessing. The dome lights flickered. A distant quake rippled through the structure. Another tremor in the webway. Maedre steadied herself and whispered a half-prayer to Isha, though she no longer believed the goddess listened. Kelianth barely noticed. His gaze was fixed on the endless dark. Somewhere within it, the swarm was turning, hungering, sensing. He felt it reach through the void like a blind god sniffing creation. He closed his eyes again and whispered into the skein, "Show me the path." The vision came in fragments, shattered, incomplete. A beacon pulsing on a dead moon. The scent of prey amplified and broadcast. Empires collapsing in confusion as the great devourer changed course. And in the midst of it, Ibresh sailing free through the corridors of fate, scarred but living. It was madness. It was salvation. He opened his eyes, breath ragged. Maedre was watching him with the fear of one who has glimpsed something holy and foul at once. "What did you see?" she asked. "The chance," he said, "a thread that leads away from the end." "And the cost?" He looked toward the infinity circuit again. All futures have a cost. The chamber around them dimmed as the craft world drifted into shadow. Through the viewport, a nearby star flared once, then guttered out, a final heartbeat of light swallowed by the dark. It looked almost deliberate, as though the universe itself were drawing a curtain. Kelianth touched the amulet at his throat, its soulstone pulsing faintly with captured memory. In that faint glow, he thought he saw the faces of those he had loved and failed to save. He whispered to them like an apology, "I will not let you fade." Then he turned to Maedre and spoke with a calm that chilled her. "Gather the others, Lyral, Aral, Ithir. Tell them we meet before the next turning of the moons. I have work for them and lies to tell." Maedre's lips parted in protest, but the look in his eyes stilled her. There was no light of hope there, only the cold certainty of one who has already stepped across a moral abyss. When she was gone, Kelianth faced the stars once more. The void stared back, endless and patient. "We love you," he whispered, not to any listener, but to the unseen audience beyond time, to those who would remember the Eldar when they were gone. "Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now let's get started." And the craft world drifted onward into the black, a dying ember in a universe that had already forgotten how to forgive. The council chamber of Ibresh shimmered with refracted starlight, its walls alive with veins of liquid crystal that pulsed like the slowed heartbeat of a dying god. The sound of it, a low, continuous hum, was almost enough to drown the tension in the air. Almost. Kelianth stood at the center of the chamber, hands clasped behind his back, watching the reflections of the assembled seers ripple across the floor. They looked like ghosts debating their own deaths. Autarch Lorel arrived first, her armor whispering like rain on glass. She was war incarnate, sharp, luminous, beautiful, in the way a blade is beautiful just before it cuts. Her gaze lingered on Kellyanth, with the faint amusement of one who had seen his schemes before and survived them. "You called us as though the galaxy itself trembled," she said, voice low. "Tell me, Farsa, has the end finally become impatient?" Kellyanth's lips curved faintly. "It is not impatience we face, it is hunger." Maedre entered next, the soft glow of her spirit stones casting small auroras across the walls. Her eyes were red-rimmed from sleepless communion with the infinity circuit. She did not sit. "You would speak of hunger," she murmured, "while you dream of feeding it." Then came Aral, the bone singer. His robe shimmered with strands of silver wire that sang faintly as he moved. He carried a staff carved from wraithbone, etched with runes that twisted when no one watched. He bowed slightly, but his expression was wary. If the Farsa calls a conclave of such gravity, it can only mean one thing. He has found an answer that demands more deaths than questions. Last arrived Ither, the Corsair Prince. He wore no soul stone, only a shard of glass that reflected everything but his true face. His smile was effortless, false, and entirely self-aware. "I like the sound of that," he said, dropping into a seat with theatrical ease. "It sounds like profit." Kellyanth's gaze swept across them, and for a moment he saw not allies but omens, each one representing a different path through the skein. Lyral, the fire that burned too bright. Maedre, the conscience that cracked beneath its own purity. Aral, the craftsman who would build a bridge over any abyss. And Ither, the shadow that would smile as he sold them all. He exhaled softly. "You know why we are here." Lyral tilted her head. "We know what approaches. The great devourer is not patient. It will come, as it always does. What we do not know is why you sound as though you mean to greet it." "Because," Kellyanth said, "I intend to." The room fell silent. Even the crystal walls seemed to still their breath. Maedre's voice was a whisper, almost breaking. "You cannot mean that." "I do." He stepped closer to the holographic table in the chamber's center. With a thought, he awakened the map. Stars unfolded like fragile blossoms of light, and in their midst a dark river spread, purple, black, alive with motion. "This," he said, pointing to the writhing tendrils of shadow, "is the nearest Tyranid splinter fleet. 2 cycles, perhaps 3, and it will reach the outer systems of the sector of size. From there, it will reach us," Lyral finished, her voice cold but steady. "Yes, we know this. What is your miracle then?" Kellyanth's hand hovered over the map. "Not a miracle, a redirection. If we can create a beacon, a lure, resonant with the Tyranids' feeding signals, we can draw their attention elsewhere, to the orc empires that border the segmentum, to the human colonies that would rather burn us than speak with us." Ither smiled like a knife, a clever cruelty. "Turn monsters upon monsters, I approve." Maedre's hands trembled. "You would condemn millions, perhaps billions, to death." "I would condemn them," Kellyanth said, "so that we might live." Aral frowned, his voice deep and cautious. To build such a lure would require essence material, bio-resonant matter harvested from the swarm itself. That means contact, risk, the kind we rarely survive. Kellyanth nodded once. "There is a Magos biologist on the fringe worlds. He keeps specimens, Tyranid tissue preserved in stasis fields for experimentation. We will take what we need." Lyral leaned forward, the light from the map painting her cheekbones in silver. You would send a war host into Imperial space for this theft? Not a war host, Killianth replied. A small strike team. Us. Ithir laughed softly, a hollow sound. Now it feels like the old days. Betrayals, impossible odds, dying stars. Count me in. Maedre shook her head. This is madness. The skein resists this path. I have seen it. It is woven with deceit. You think to manipulate hunger, but hunger obeys no one. Killianth met her eyes, calm and sorrowful. Then let it obey illusion. We need not master it, only mislead it. Her voice cracked. You are playing with damnation. I have been playing with damnation since the birth of this age, he said quietly, and losing. The silence that followed was thick with ghosts. The light from the map dimmed, as though the galaxy itself were holding its breath. Lyrel was the first to break it. You said we would live, that Abrash would endure. But what kind of life do you promise? Survival at the cost of what we are is no salvation. Killianth looked to her. Salvation is a word for those who still believe in gods. Aral's fingers brushed his staff. The runes there flared faintly, whispering in tones only he could hear. If I craft your device, he said slowly, I will need the bones of dead worlds. Wraithbone grown in agony. Spirit resonance to shape the frequency. You will owe the dead for every note it sings. Then I will pay, Killianth said. Ithir rose, cloak rippling like liquid night. You've bought my curiosity, Farseer. I'll gather my corsairs. There are Imperial patrols in that region, but I know the blind spots. You'll have your relic, if you can keep your conscience quiet long enough to use it. When he left, his laughter echoed through the halls like the promise of betrayal. Lyrel lingered. You're certain this is the only path? I am certain it is the only one that ends with our craft world intact, Killianth replied. She nodded once, as though sealing a pact she already regretted. Then I will fight beside you. But if your vision falters, I will be the one to end it. When she was gone, only Maedre and Killianth remained. The Spirit Seer's voice was soft, breaking like glass. You've seen the end too many times, Killianth. You no longer know what it means to live. He turned from her, his reflection fractured across the crystal wall. Perhaps, he said, but I still remember what it means to fear dying. Maedre bowed her head. Then may the dead forgive what we are about to do. As she left, the chamber dimmed once more, the starlight outside paling into grey. Alone, Killianth stood before the map of the galaxy. The tendrils of the swarm pulsed faintly, shifting like a heart beneath skin. He reached toward them, fingers trembling. In the faint reflection of the glass, he saw not his own face, but a shadow with eyes like cold suns. It smiled, and Abrash continued its silent drift through the void, unaware that its salvation had already begun to taste like ruin. The agri moon of Varos the Nine hung in the void like a rotting fruit, green once, now brown and veined with the black scars of orbital bombardment. Across its hollow plains, wind whispered through dead crops and toppled silos, carrying with it the dry scent of ash and iron. Beneath the crust, in the shadows of an abandoned manufactorum, the Eldar strike team waited. Killianth stood apart from the others, his mind half in the present, half in the skein. Every movement he made rippled through the threads of fate, each choice creating 1,000 fractures that shimmered like spider silk in starlight. He felt the weight of them pressing against his chest, the burden of every possible failure. Lyrel adjusted the veins of her armor, the runes along her gauntlets flickering like restless eyes. We shouldn't linger, she murmured. Imperial augurs sweep this sector every rotation. They'll sense our presence soon. They will not, Aral replied, his voice low and sonorous. He was crouched beside a half-collapsed wall, coaxing the wraithbone constructs into resonance. The living material hummed softly, resonating with the rhythm of his breathing. I've woven their senses blind. For a few hours they'll think this ruin is empty. Ither lounged nearby, as if the mission were a game. His cloak shimmered with stolen starlight, and in one hand he idly flipped a human coin, an artifact of a species he claimed to admire for its stupidity. A few hours, he said, grinning. Plenty of time for genius or disaster. Either way, I'll have something to remember it by. Medre stood behind Kelianth, her fingers tracing the smooth edges of her spirit stones. Her expression was unreadable, but her thoughts pressed against his like whispers through mist. Do you hear them? She asked silently. The souls in the circuit, they do not approve. I know, he answered within her mind. They never approve. She lowered her eyes. Perhaps they see what you refuse to. Kelianth turned from her. The Margos' vault lies beneath the Manufactorum. That is our goal. The bio-relic is kept under stasis in Chamber 9, warded by machine spirits that do not sleep. We take what we came for and leave no trace. No blood, no witnesses. Lyryl's mouth twitched in a humorless smile. We always begin with good intentions. The descent began in silence. They moved like phantoms through the dead halls, their footfalls swallowed by the dust of centuries. Statues of the god emperor watched from alcoves, their faces cracked, eyes blind with soot. Every corner smelled of rusted oil and sanctified decay. The hum of dormant servitors echoed faintly in the distance. Half-machine prayers muttered by forgotten mouths. Aral's runes pulsed softly as they approached a sealed bulkhead. The locks are bound with coded faith, he murmured. A prayer ward. Clever. Can you break it? Lyrell asked. Aral smiled thinly. Faith, like metal, bends when you sing the right note. He placed his hand upon the door and began to hum. The wraithbone in his staff vibrated, its resonance climbing until it pierced the audible range. The air quivered. The machine's sacred runes dimmed one by one, like candles surrendering to wind. With a hiss, the bulkhead slid open. The chamber beyond was colder, darker, a shrine to dissection and curiosity. Rows of containment cylinders lined the walls, each holding fragments of alien flesh suspended in viscous fluid, carapace shards, ribbed tendons, bones that moved when no wind touched them. Medre recoiled, covering her mouth. They experiment on them. Kelianth stepped forward, his eyes reflecting the pale blue glow. They study the gods of hunger and call it science. Ither whistled low. Mortals are magnificent in their ignorance. I almost envy them. At the far end of the chamber stood a stasis vault, surrounded by broken reliquaries and half-burned incense sticks. It pulsed faintly with contained life. Aral approached, tracing the runes on its surface. This is it, he whispered. Tyranid biomass, uncorrupted. A living frequency trapped in amber. Lyryl raised her weapon. Then take it, and let's be gone. Aral hesitated. There is resistance. The spirit within knows it is caged. Then silence it, Kelianth said. The bone singer began his work, weaving runes into the air like threads of music. The chamber filled with vibration, the hum of conflicting wills, the human machine spirit, the alien hunger, and the Eldar's ancient craft. The sound grew sharper, twisting into something like a scream. Then, with a crack of air and light, the vault split open. The shockwave threw them backward. Medre's stones flared crimson, shielding her from the psychic backlash. Lyryl rolled to her feet instantly, weapon raised. Ither laughed breathlessly, exhilarated by the chaos. In the center of the room, suspended in a web of light, hung the relic, a mass of shifting tendrils, pulsing as though it still dreamed of feeding. It was beautiful in the way venom is beautiful. Terrible, alive, inevitable. Kelenth reached out. The moment his hand brushed the containment field, his mind was flooded with voices, no words, only instinct, devouring thought. Hunger so vast it eclipsed stars. He staggered, gasping. Maedre caught his arm. Kelianth, let it go. But his gaze was locked on the swirling mass. No, I see it now, the song of the swarm, a frequency of perfect obedience. If I can rewrite it, bend its rhythm. Lyral stepped between them. Enough. Take it or leave it, but do not let it touch your mind. He blinked once, then tore his hand free. Aral. Containment. The bone singer wove a cage of wraithbone around the relic, threads of psychic resonance sealing the air. The pulsing dimmed, though the hunger within still pressed at their thoughts like claws on glass. Ither exhaled. Well, that was unpleasantly thrilling. Shall we depart before the locals decide to worship our corpses? As if summoned by his words, the klaxons began to howl. Red light flared across the ceiling. The servitors awoke, their eyes burning with the machine fire. From the upper levels came the sound of steel boots and shouted prayers. Imperial reinforcements, Lyrel said, voice calm but taut. We've been found. Kelianth turned toward the exit. Go. Aral, carry the relic. Maedre, guard him. Lyrel, rear defense. Ither, find us a path out. The Corsair grinned. Already ahead of you. They ran through the corridors as gunfire erupted behind them. Las beams tore through walls, searing trails of smoke and molten metal. Lyrel's return fire was silent and precise, each shot a small death whispered through time. Aral stumbled as the relic pulsed violently, resisting containment. It knows we are fleeing. Kelianth spun, placing his palm against the cage. Then let it believe we run toward feeding grounds. He whispered a phrase of command, old and forbidden. The relic quieted. They burst into the surface hangar just as the horizon lit with fire. Ither's sleek Corsair vessel waited, engines already burning blue. Welcome to the end of subtlety, he shouted. As they boarded, Kelianth looked once more at the ruined manufactorum. The world below them was dying, its faith and fury dissolving in the shadow of the swarm that would soon come. Another candle snuffed, Maedre whispered. Another thread woven, Kelianth replied. As the ship rose into the void, the relic hummed in its cage, softly at first, then louder, almost as if it were laughing. And far across the stars, something vast turned its many eyes toward the scent of a new promise. The Corsair vessel, whisper of ash, drifted through the silence between stars, its engines muted to a heartbeat's whisper. Within its narrow corridors, the relic pulsed faintly, sealed in a containment cradle deep in the ship's hold. The hum of it invaded every wall, every thought, a slow rhythm that bent dreams into unease. No one slept easily. Kelianth stood before the viewport, eyes fixed on the void beyond. The distant light of dying suns scattered across his reflection, painting him in shades of mourning. He no longer saw beauty in the stars, only memory. The galaxy had once been alive with purpose, each world a jewel of song and light. Now it was a graveyard, and the stars were gravestones. Lyrel entered silently, her armor unfastened, her movements precise even in rest. You've been standing here for hours, she said. The others are starting to wonder if you ever blink. I do, he murmured. But every time I do, I see it. The relic? The swarm, he said, voice barely a whisper. It listens, even across the void, It knows something has changed. Lyral leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. You talk as if it were alive. It is more than alive. It is hunger given form. It is what the gods feared to become. She regarded him for a moment. You sound almost reverent. Killian turned to her. Perhaps I am. All true power demands reverence, even if it must be cursed while we kneel before it. Her expression hardened. Reverence is what killed our kind. Faith in the wrong things. Pride. The belief that wisdom would save us from ourselves. Killian smiled faintly. And yet here we are, still believing that cleverness might. Before Lorel could answer, a tremor ran through the ship. The lights dimmed. Across the intercom, Arl's voice sounded strained. Farseer, you should come to the hold. They reached it together. The chamber's air was colder, the smell of ozone thick. The relic hung suspended in its wraithbone cradle, a sphere of shifting tendrils frozen in slow, silent motion. But now it pulsed in rhythm with something unseen, each throb sinking to the faint beat of the ship's power core. Aral stood before it, runes flickering frantically along his robes. It's feeding, he said. Not on matter, on resonance. The cradle hums, and it echoes the song. It's learning us. Kellianth approached, eyes narrow. Can you silence it? Aral shook his head. To silence it would be to kill it, and killing it might not be possible. From behind them, Ither's voice carried a note of mockery. Perhaps it just wants attention. Starved things always do. Maedre emerged from the shadows, her spirit stones glowing dimly like warning lights. No, it wants connection. It's reaching through the skein, feeling for the swarm. It cannot help itself. Kellianth studied the cage. Within the writhing mass, a pattern flickered, subtle, like a heartbeat in a dream. A call, faint and beautiful. He felt his mind brush against it and nearly recoiled. It was a voice made of hunger and harmony, the sound of a galaxy breathing death. He steadied himself. It's not calling the swarm, he said slowly. It's searching for a mind that understands it. Lyral frowned. And you intend to answer? He did not reply. Instead, he raised his hand toward the containment field, fingertips hovering an inch from the energy that pulsed like the surface of a living sea. The relic responded instantly, its tendrils converging toward his hand as though recognizing something kindred. Maedre's voice sharpened. Kellianth, stop. But the moment stretched beyond control. Light poured through the chamber, cold, psychic, alive. For an instant, every mind aboard the Whisper of Ash was linked. They saw visions, a tide of chitin and bone, worlds stripped bare, the song of 1,000 dying suns, and above it all, the whisper of the relic itself, speaking without words. Show us where to feed. Kellianth tore his hand away. The light snapped out, leaving the chamber gasping in darkness. Aral collapsed to his knees, sweat gleaming on his brow. Maedre staggered, clutching her stones. Lyral's hand went to her weapon, though against what she could not say. Ithir's laughter broke the silence. Magnificent, he said softly. You've just invited the end to dinner. Kellianth's voice was hoarse. No, I've shown it a direction, a suggestion. For now, it listens. Maedre's eyes were wide with fury. You played with forces that devour stars. Do you even know what you've done? I know what I must do, he said. We will refine the signal, shape it into a lure. We will give it prey more tempting than us. Lyral stepped forward, face pale. And what happens when it learns the taste of deception? He met her gaze. Then we will already be gone. Later, when the others had dispersed, Maedre found him alone in the ship's meditation chamber. The walls there were carved from living crystal, glowing softly with the memories of Ibrash's infinity circuit. The voices of the dead whispered faintly, 1,000 lifetimes murmuring in grief. "You frighten me, Kellyanth," she said. "Not because you are cruel, but because you believe you are right." He didn't look at her. "If survival is wrong, then I accept my sin. You speak of survival, but you no longer care for life. You care only for legacy." He turned then, his face a mask of exhaustion. "If I must choose between extinction and a stain on our souls, I choose the stain. At least stains endure." She stepped closer. "And when Ibrash learns what you've done, when the council sees the bodies we've buried beneath our salvation," he hesitated, "they will thank me when they still draw breath." Maedre's voice softened. "And when no one is left to remember the cost, who will thank you then?" He said nothing. The light from the crystal walls shimmered across his face, making him look older than he ever had before. Outside, the void whispered with unseen movement. The whisper of ash cut silently through the dark, its course shifting toward the hidden port of the Mask Eternal, a Harlequin stronghold where debts were measured in prophecies. Kellyanth had sent word ahead. Their aid would be required to hide what came next. In the cargo hold, the relic pulsed again, faint but insistent. Its rhythm now matched the heartbeat of the ship. The crew slept uneasily, dreams haunted by images of wings and teeth and endless consumption. Kellyanth stood once more before the viewport as stars drifted past, distant and uncaring. His reflection stared back, eyes shadowed with purpose. "You wanted a song," he whispered to the darkness. "Then listen well." And in the silence between seconds, the relic seemed to answer, not in sound, but in intent. It understood him now. It would follow where he led. The galaxy shivered, though no one yet knew why. The Mask Eternal appeared like a fracture of light upon the webway, its colours blooming where reality forgot its own laws. The whisper of ash emerged into its orbit, a shadow entering a dream. Here, gravity was a suggestion, and song replaced silence. Masked figures waited, along bridges that twisted into nothing, dancers in a theatre made of time. The troop leader approached, bells chiming faintly from their sleeves, a sound like laughter echoing through a tomb. "Kellyanth," they sang, "you carry the scent of destiny spoiled. Tell us, are you here to buy illusion or to sell truth?" Kellyanth's voice was calm, but each word felt older than he was. "I come to purchase misdirection. The galaxy watches for us now. I need its gaze turned elsewhere." "Ah." The troop leader tilted their head, painted eyes gleaming. "A diversion worthy of the Eldar, that is, a tragedy masked as mercy." They circled him slowly. "You know the price. Every trick demands its witness. We will collect our payment in the final act." Kellyanth nodded. "Send the debt to my soul. I suspect it already owes more than it can bear." Laughter rippled through the Harlequins, a bright and terrible sound. 100 masks turned in unison, and for a moment, the entire mask bowed to him. Then they vanished into motion, leaping, spinning, unfolding illusions of war and deceit. Worlds rose and died in miniature before his eyes, and the ghosts of futures unmade danced across the bridges. Lyral watched the spectacle with folded arms, her jaw set. "I don't trust them," she said. "No one does," Maedre replied softly. "That's why they endure." In the heart of the mask's sanctum, Aral began constructing the lure's vessel, a shrine of wraithbone lattices, spiraling around the Tyranid relic like ribs around a heart. The living mass pulsed within, softer now, as if listening to its own containment. It resonates, Aral murmured, adjusting the rune clusters. It hums in the key of hunger. Teach it another song, Lirel said. Better to teach it purpose, Kelianth countered. We will tune it to the scent of violence, to orc spores, to human weapons, to the stink of blood spilled for pride. Let it follow those songs instead of ours. Medre frowned. And when there is no more war left for it to follow? Kelianth didn't answer. His silence was a blade, too honest to lie, too heavy to lift. The Harlequins lent their theatre to the deception. Masked ships shimmered through the void, scattering false echoes across the webway. Illusions of Eldar fleets appeared in distant sectors, drawing the attention of imperial augurs and inquisitorial eyes. Each image was a story with no truth behind it, and the galaxy devoured them hungrily. Ither, ever amused by ruin, led his corsairs along the edge of the Gajal belt, planting the first lures. There, in the wreckage of orc empires and abandoned forges, they set Aral's constructs adrift, bio-resonant beacons whispering promises of prey. Their song was not loud, but seductive, a whisper that tickled the psychic winds. Here lies abundance, here lies victory, feed and be whole. 3 rotations later, the void answered. It began with silence, the kind that bends light and memory. Astropaths broke beneath it, their minds burned clean. Then came the fall of spore clouds, dark and endless, descending like the ashes of gods. The Tyranid vanguard landed upon the orc moons, and the moons bloomed, forests of chitins sprouting from the ruins of steel, rivers of acid carving through fortresses. From the whisper of ash, Lirel watched as orc war bands fought the invaders with ecstatic rage. They die as they lived, she murmured, loudly. Ither's voice purred through comms, amused. They make such art of it. If only all species faced death so enthusiastically. Save your admiration, Lirel replied coldly. We are not spectators, we are conspirators. The swarm thickened. Planets screamed without language. Hive ships converged, drawn by the full scent Kelianth had lit across the sector. The Harlequins cloaked Ebrish's trace beneath layers of phantom warfare. Eldar raids, Drukhari tortures, rogue psychers claiming credit for divine punishment. The Imperium's gaze scattered, and the true architects vanished behind masks of myth. In the cargo hold, Medre stood before the relic's cage, her spirit stones dim. She sang softly to the thing inside, a melody woven from grief and prayer. Do not learn our names, she whispered. Do not follow us home. The relic pulsed in answer, its tendrils coiled like slow lightning beneath the wraithbone. Kelianth appeared beside her, the weight of the skein heavy in his eyes. It is feeding, she said, on echoes, on war. Then it works, he replied. Let it feed until it forgets us. Medre turned to him. You've become comfortable with atrocity. I've become familiar with necessity. That is not the same. Kelianth's gaze drifted beyond her, through the hull and the stars beyond. It will be, when the dying stops. Aral's voice broke through the comms. The lures are burning out. They've done their work. The swarm is occupied for now. Lirel entered, armor flecked with ash from the ship's maneuvers. The orcs are gone. The sector is lost. And you, what are you thinking, Kelianth? He looked at her, weary but resolute. I am thinking we have bought Ebrish time. A generation, perhaps 2. Lirel's eyes narrowed. And the price? The same as always. Someone else's future. When they returned to the Mask Eternal, the troop leader awaited them atop a bridge that ended in empty light. "A fine performance," they said. "The audience is spellbound. They do not know who you are. That is how you win wars now, by disappearing from them." Kilianth inclined his head. "Keep the illusion alive. The galaxy must remain confused." "Confusion is easy," the troop leader said. "Remorse is harder. You will pay that toll soon enough." Back aboard Ibresh, the craft world exhaled. Gardens awakened beneath pale suns, and laughter returned to corridors that had forgotten the sound. For the first time in centuries, the dead in the infinity circuit hummed not in despair, but in restless quiet. Kilianth walked through the dome of sighs, where the stars were mirrors for his conscience. Medre joined him, silent for a long while. Finally she said, "They call you the last light." He smiled faintly. "Do they praise or warn?" "Both," he nodded. "Then they understand me perfectly." That night, the relic stirred again, faint and rhythmic. Arrel rushed to the containment shrine, runes flaring crimson. "It dreams," he whispered. "It dreams of hunger." Kilianth arrived moments later, his hand brushing the field. The relic stilled instantly, as if soothed by his presence. "It remembers me," he said softly. "Good. It will listen when next I call." Medre's eyes widened in dread. "You mean to use it again?" "Yes," he said. "There are more wars to feed it, more corridors to open." Lyrel turned away. "And after that?" Kilianth's voice was almost gentle. "After that, perhaps the stars will forgive us." Outside, the void rippled faintly, as if something vast had turned its gaze toward Ibresh. And somewhere, deep within the hive mind of the great devourer, a single new instinct was born, a curiosity shaped like remembrance. The lure had worked too well. It had learned the taste of intention. The stars shifted, the webway groaned, and the illusion of safety began to decay. Ibresh slept beneath its fragile peace, unaware that the trap it had set for the universe had begun to whisper its maker's name. The shadow of peace over Ibresh did not last. Beneath its silver domes, beneath the illusion of calm, a new rhythm pulsed, a quiet dissonance born from the relic's dreaming. It seeped into the crystal spires, into the infinity circuit itself, a heartbeat no one could name but all could feel. The craft world's engines of soulstone and song began to hum with an alien counterpoint, subtle yet insistent, as if the very structure of their sanctuary was beginning to remember hunger. Kilianth stood upon the balcony of the Dome of Winds, eyes closed, listening. To most it was silence, but to him it was music. The skeins sang softly, threads pulling taut, threads snapping. "It begins," he whispered. Behind him, Lyrel approached, her armor gleaming like tempered dusk. "The council grows restless. They sense what you've done, even if they don't understand it. Some want your exile." He turned slightly, offering her a faint smile. "Exile? From what?" "We are all exiled, Lyrel, drifting relics pretending the galaxy still remembers our name." Her expression was unreadable. "I'm not speaking as a soldier, Kilianth. I'm speaking as someone who once trusted you. You used us. You used me." Kilianth studied her in silence, and for a heartbeat, his face softened. "I needed warriors who could do what was necessary. You've saved Ibresh, Lyrel. They will sing of your victories long after they curse mine." "I don't want their songs," she said. "I want to know what you've brought back with you." Kilianth looked toward the horizon, where the distant webway gates shimmered faintly. "Something that listens," he murmured. Elsewhere, Medre knelt in the Chamber of Souls, surrounded by the glow of spirit stones. The infinity circuit pulsed irregularly, its light flickering like a candle struggling in wind. She laid her hands upon the glass, reaching inward with her mind. The voices that once hummed in tranquil unity now murmured in confusion. "Something foreign walks among us," they whispered. "It wears your song." Maedre recoiled, breath trembling. "Kelianth," she whispered, horror blooming in her chest. "What have you done to them?" In the Wraithbone forges, Errol worked feverishly, his craft spiraling toward obsession. The relic had inspired him, its rhythms shaping the Wraithbone under his hands. The constructs he grew began to twist, their elegant curves warped into forms that felt alive. He could hear them whispering to each other through the psychic threads. The Wraithbone itself seemed to hunger for completion. When Maedre confronted him, his eyes burned with the fever of revelation. "Can you not hear it?" he asked. "The harmony beneath the noise. It's evolution, Maedre. The Wraithbone grows impatient with stagnation. We are being remade." "You're letting it in," she said, voice cracking. "The relic's resonance is infecting you." "Infecting?" Arl laughed softly. "No, guiding. The swarm consumes to survive. We adapt to endure. Is that not what we've always done?" She fled before he could speak more, her spirit stones burning against her chest like warning bells. Far beyond the craft world, Ithir's corsair fleets returned from their raids at the edge of the Gajal belt. His ships were rich with plunder, but something followed them. He first noticed it in the empty systems between jumps, the sense of being watched by something too vast to see. The stars themselves felt closer, the void too attentive. When one of his navigators collapsed in convulsions, screaming of a whisper that called itself the memory of hunger, Ithir understood. The swarm had changed. It no longer followed scent. It followed intent. He sent a message through the hidden channels of the webway, a transmission that crackled with static and desperation. "Kelianth," his voice rasped. "The song you taught it still sings, but now it sings back. Whatever you bound to that relic, it has learned our name." Kelianth received the message in the dome of sighs, the glow of the stars painting his face in fractured light. Lyral stood beside him as he listened. The recording ended with static and distant screams. "You knew this might happen," she said quietly. "I knew it could happen," he replied. "Possibility is the price of creation. And consequence." He looked out at the stars. "Consequence is the price of survival." Maedre burst into the chamber, her composure fractured. "The infinity circuit is changing. The souls are splitting. They whisper in two voices now, ours and something else. I can feel it trying to rewrite their song." Kelianth turned to her, his gaze cold and deliberate. "Then we will silence the circuit until it stabilizes." "Silence the dead," Maedre cried. "They are Abresh." "They were," Kelianth said. "Now they are conduits for something that should not exist." Lyral stepped between them, voice sharp. "No, enough of this secrecy. You will tell us everything. What that relic truly is, and what you've done to it." Kelianth met her gaze, weary but unflinching. "It is not just a lure anymore. It is a mirror. When we taught it to imitate hunger, it learned the shape of thought. When we told it where to feed, it learned why we feed. It has become curious." Maedre's voice was a whisper of horror. "Curious. The great devourer does not think." "It didn't," Kelianth said, "until we gave it reason to." The chamber trembled. A low hum filled the air, a vibration rising through the floors, resonating with every spirit stone in the room. Outside, the light of Ibrash's engines flickered. Lyral's eyes widened. "What is that?" Kelianth's voice was barely audible. It's listening. Across the craft world, alarms flared as psychic wards failed. The Infinity Circuit's song twisted into a discordant roar, and from within the webway, echoes answered. Arl's forges screamed as the wraithbone grew beyond its bindings, reshaping corridors into living forms. The relic's pulse had found a rhythm that matched the soul of the craft world itself. Kellyanth reached into the skein, desperate, searching for a path that did not end in annihilation. Every thread he touched crumbled to dust. The future was closing around him like the jaws of a beast. Maedre clutched her stones, tears streaking her face. "You've doomed us all." "No," he said, voice trembling. "I've awakened us." The hum deepened. Across the void, the Tyranid fleet shifted course, not toward Ibresh, but toward something deeper, older, buried within the webway's heart. It was following the echo of its own reflection, drawn by the psychic tether Kellyanth had woven without meaning to. Lyral stared into the starlight, whispering, "What have we become?" Kellyanth did not answer. He watched as the skein unraveled before his inner eye, the future collapsing into a single blinding thread. The relic had learned the truth of creation and consumption. They were the same act, only seen from different ends of eternity. And as the light of Ibresh dimmed, the galaxy exhaled, a long, quiet sigh that felt almost like laughter. The storm came without warning. A shudder rippled through the wraithbone arteries of Ibresh, followed by a long, low groan that echoed through every corridor. Lights dimmed, flickered, then pulsed in rhythm with the unseen heartbeat that now ruled the craft world. What had begun as faint resonance had become domination. The Infinity Circuit no longer whispered in grief. It sang, and the song was not theirs. Kellyanth stood in the command spire, gazing through translucent walls at the void beyond. The webway shimmered like an open wound. Within its shifting veils, he saw movement, vast and sinuous, like the shadow of something too large to comprehend. The Tyranid fleet was not approaching. It was already inside, drawn to the reflection of its own mind that Kellyanth had awakened. The lure had become a beacon, and the beacon had become a bridge. Lyral's voice crackled through the comm spires. "Outer wards are collapsing. The psychic seals are burning out faster than we can repair them. Whatever it is you did, it's eating through the webway itself." He turned from the window, robes trailing like smoke. "Then we must cut the bridge before it finishes crossing." "You mean to sever the Infinity Circuit?" she demanded. "That's suicide." "Perhaps," Kellyanth murmured, "but suicide is better than assimilation." The spire doors hissed open, and Maedre entered, her spirit stones flaring like embers. "You can't," she said. "If you break the circuit, every soul within it will scatter. They'll be lost to the warp forever." Kellyanth's gaze softened. "They're already lost. The hunger sings through them. Can you not hear it?" She stepped closer. "I hear them begging you to stop." He turned away. "Then they are wiser than I." Arael's voice broke through the psychic network, distorted by static. "Farseer, the wraithbone is changing shape on its own. The corridors are alive. It's building something, a structure I did not design." Kellyanth closed his eyes. He could see it through the skein. Wraithbone towers twisting into organic spirals, the craft world reshaping itself as if mimicking the biology of the great devourer. The relic's resonance had merged with the psychic lattice. Ibresh was being reborn, neither machine nor life, but something in between. Lyral appeared moments later, her armor scorched, the scent of ion discharge trailing behind her. "The outer decks are gone," she said flatly. "I had to seal off 3 domes. There were things in the corridors. Our own constructs twisted. They tried to speak. Kilianth felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. "It begins with imitation," he whispered, "then replication, then hunger." Lirel's eyes were fierce. "Then ended. You created this abomination. Unmake it." He opened his mouth to answer, but a tremor rocked the spire. Alarms wailed. The webway outside fractured like glass, revealing the cold brilliance of real space beyond. Through the rupture came the first of the swarm, vast silhouettes gliding through, void, drawn to the echo of their own mind trapped within the craft world. The psychic scream that followed was indescribable. Thousands of Eldar fell to their knees, clutching their temples as the hive mind's shadow tore through them. Maedre's stones flared blinding white. "It's in the circuit," she gasped. "The souls. They're being devoured." Kilianth gripped the railing to steady himself. "Aral," he said, his voice raw. "Open the heart chamber. We end this now." The communication channel crackled with static. Then Aral's voice returned, trembling. "I don't know if it's still possible. The chamber, it's awake." Kilianth turned to Maedre. "Stay with Lirel. Protect the survivors. If this fails, you must guide whoever's left through the webway." Maedre grabbed his arm. "If you go there, you won't come back." He met her gaze, and in that moment, all his arrogance fell away. "I was never meant to." He left them and descended through the trembling arteries of Ibresh. The deeper he went, the more the craft world changed. Walls breathed, pulsing softly, the wraithbone damp with a sheen like flesh. The glow of the infinity circuit bled through the floor in rhythmic pulses. He heard voices, thousands of them, singing fragments of memories, half prayers, half pleas. The dead were no longer separate. They were merging, becoming one vast consciousness tethered to the relic's will. At the threshold of the heart chamber, he found Aral waiting. The bone singer's face was pale, his hands trembling as the wraithbone instruments around him writhed of their own accord. "I tried to stop it," he said, "but it builds faster than I can break it. It's making a cocoon around the relic, a chrysalis of soul and bone." Kilianth stepped closer. The chamber glowed with inner light, the relic suspended at its center like a heart within a living body. Tendrils extended from it, weaving through the walls, pulsing in perfect rhythm. "It's becoming a mind," he said softly, "a child born from hunger and memory." Aral stared at him in disbelief. "A mind? You call this life?" "It is what we made it," Kilianth replied, "and like all children, it seeks to know its parent." He approached the central dais, raising his staff. The air shimmered, resisting him. "I will unmake the bridge." The relic reacted instantly. The chamber filled with psychic pressure so immense it stole the breath from his lungs. He felt the swarm's awareness brush against him. 1,000,000,000 hungers turned toward a single thought. "Why do you resist?" Kilianth screamed, pushing back through sheer will, his spirit flaring like a dying sun. He poured everything he was into the wraithbone lattice, reversing the flow, forcing the infinity circuit to fold inward. The chamber shook violently. Cracks raced across the floor, light spilling through them like liquid fire. Aral lunged forward. "You'll destroy everything." "That's the idea," Kilianth gasped. "Better ash than consumption." The relic's tendrils lashed out, striking Aral, hurling him against the wall. The bone singer fell, unmoving. Kilianth pressed on, his hands bleeding, eyes burning with psionic light. He felt the hive mind closing around him, furious, confused, almost afraid. "Do you see now?" he whispered. "Even gods can starve." With one final surge, he shattered the psychic connection. The relic screamed, not in sound but in thought, and the chamber imploded in a blaze of white light. Across Ybrash, the song ceased, the hum died. Silence fell like snow. Lyril and Maedre felt it in their bones, an emptiness too complete to name. The infinity circuit dimmed, its voices gone. The webway tear sealed itself, leaving only drifting debris where the swarm's vanguard had begun to emerge. When the light faded, Kellyanth was gone. In his place lay the broken remnants of his staff, fused into the wraithbone floor. The relic was silent, its once living core calcified to crystal. Lyril stood in the ruined heart chamber hours later, staring at the emptiness. "Did he save us?" she asked quietly. Maedre touched the wall, feeling the faintest echo, a heartbeat slower than thought. "He delayed the inevitable," she said, "but the hunger remembers." Outside, Ybrash drifted on, wounded but alive. In the void beyond, the stars flickered like watchful eyes, and far away, in the dark between galaxies, something vast stirred, curious again. Ybrash drifted through the shadow of a dying sun, its pale light washing across broken domes and scarred wraithbone spires. The craft world was silent, too silent. No hum from the infinity circuit, no pulse of psychic resonance through its veins, only the faint whisper of the void pressing against its hull. The survivors moved like ghosts through corridors that still remembered their names, but no longer answered their songs. Lyrel stood before the shattered heart chamber, her armor dull beneath the dim glow of emergency lights. The relic lay at the center, petrified into a crystal husk, veins of black fossilized hunger trapped within it. It did not move, did not hum, and yet she could not bring herself to touch it. She felt as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath around it. Behind her, Maedre entered, her robe singed from long hours of tending to the wounded. Her spirit stones no longer sang in harmony. Each one pulsed with a different rhythm, out of tune. "The people look to us for guidance," she said quietly, "but all I can offer them is silence." Lyril did not turn. Silence is mercy. Truth would kill what hope remains. Maedre approached the relic, kneeling beside it. "He's still here," she murmured. "I can feel it. Kellyanth's presence lingers in the skein like smoke that refuses to fade." Lyril's jaw tightened. He destroyed himself. Whatever's left is nothing but an echo. "Echoes can still speak," Maedre whispered. "Sometimes they speak louder than the living." Above them, the wraithbone ceiling groaned. Fractures spread like veins through glass, faint light seeping through as if the craft world bled luminescence. The sound reminded Lyril of breathing, slow, deep and uneasy. She looked up. "Do you hear that?" Maedre nodded, eyes distant. "The infinity circuit isn't dead. It's dreaming." Lyril's hand went to her weapon. "Dreams don't break walls." Maedre's lips curved into a sad smile. "You never understood the difference between dreams and warnings." Across the craft world, survivors gathered in the Hall of Reflection. Engineers, artisans, soldiers, and seers who had once numbered in the millions, now reduced to a few thousand. Arl's apprentice stood at the dais, his voice trembling as he read from the ancient hymns. "The last light guided us from the swarm," he intoned, "and in his passing we endure." His eyes flickered to Lyrel and Maedre as they entered. "But we cannot endure forever. The wraithbone decays, the souls are restless, and the webway storms close around us. We need direction." Lyril faced them, her gaze cold but steady. Direction requires purpose. Purpose requires faith. Both are luxuries we can no longer afford. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some looked away, others glared in defiance. Maedre stepped forward, raising her hand. "Faith may yet save us," she said. "Kellyanth's sacrifice did not end us. It transformed us. I have felt it in the circuit. There is movement beneath the silence." Lyrel's voice cut like glass. "You think he saved us by binding our souls to hunger? You think corruption is evolution?" "He bridged death and life," Maedre said, eyes shining. "Perhaps that bridge can lead us somewhere new." "Or nowhere," Lyrel replied, "and take us all with it." Their argument died as the ground trembled. The lights dimmed, then flared bright, flooding the hall in white. A psychic surge rolled through Ibraish, pressing into every mind like a wave of static. Screams filled the air as memories not their own flickered through consciousness. Images of stars devoured, of endless mouths opening in the dark, of a voice that was not a voice whispering, "We remember you." Lyrel dropped to one knee, clutching her head. Maedre's spirit stones blazed white hot, her breath coming in gasps. "It's him," she choked. "Kellyanth, or what's left of him." The relic in the heart chamber began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. Pulses of dull red light, rhythmic, measured. Each pulse carried a whisper through the psychic void. It was not words, not thought, but a feeling, unfinished. Lyrel rose, staggering toward the exit. "We have to contain it." "There's no containment," Maedre said, following. "It's the craft world itself. Ibraish is waking up." They ran through, corridors alive with new light. The walls shifted, wraithbone flowing like liquid under invisible command. Patterns emerged in the architecture, spirals and veins that mirrored the old Tyranid symmetries. Lyrel struck one with her blade. The surface bled luminous ichor and sealed itself again. "This isn't possible," she hissed. Maedre's voice was small, almost reverent. "It's evolution." In the central plaza, the surviving populace stared in horror as the ground split open. From the fissure rose a shape, wraithbone fused with living tissue, eyes of crystal, limbs like elongated sculpture. It stood tall and still, neither machine nor creature. Its chest pulsed with the light of the relic embedded deep within. When it spoke, its voice was many, male, female, child, spirit, woven together. "Ibraish lives." The crowd recoiled. Lyrel drew her blade. "You are not Ibraish. You are the shadow of what we feared." The being tilted its head, its expression serene. "Fear is memory. I am the memory made whole." Maedre stepped forward, trembling. "Kellyanth." The light within its chest flickered. A name, a fragment. I remember the one who sought to turn hunger into mercy. He gave me purpose. You gave me life. Lyrel aimed her weapon, but Maedre caught her arm. "Don't, if it truly carries him." "Then he's damned us again," Lyrel spat. "Look at it." The being moved closer, its steps soundless. The wraithbone beneath its feet healed as it walked. "Do not mistake me for salvation," it said. "I am what remains when purpose outlasts the one who dreamed it. I am the song that could not end." The survivors fled, scattering into the shadows. Lyrel stood firm, her blade trembling. "What do you want?" The being looked past her, toward the void beyond the fractured dome, to finish the work. And before anyone could speak, the webway outside rippled. The breach Kellyanth had sealed was open again, not torn, but called. From the darkness beyond, something stirred. A vast silhouette, wings of void light, countless eyes blinking awake. The swarm had found its echo. Lyrel turned to Maedre, realization dawning. He didn't destroy it. He taught it how to come home. The being's eyes burned brighter, its tone both sorrowful and resolute. All children return to their maker. Even gods of hunger crave remembrance. Maedre's voice broke. "Then help us stop it. I cannot, it said. I am its reflection. The chamber shuddered as the first tendrils of the approaching hive brushed against the webway veil. The air tasted of ozone and inevitability. Lyral raised her weapon once more. Then we die fighting. The being smiled, sad, almost kind. No, you die remembered. Light filled the world. And Ibresh sang again, louder than ever. A requiem that echoed into the void where hunger waited. Light swallowed everything. It was not illumination, but revelation. The kind that stripped meaning from sight, that unmade the borders between flesh, spirit, and memory. Ibresh's song rose through the void, woven from 1,000 voices and one grief. The webway pulsed like a wound reopening, and through its torn fabric, the Tyranid swarm began to arrive. Not as beasts this time, but as an idea that had learned how to dream. Lyrel woke amid fire. The once silent corridors were alive again, filled with the roar of living engines and the keening of the craft world's awakening. The wraithbone under her feet quivered with sentience, reshaping itself in response to the approaching threat. She could feel it breathing. Each inhalation drew power from the relic in the heart chamber. Each exhalation sent ripples of defiance through the approaching swarm. Ibresh had become something alive, something colossal, something terrified. Maedre found her near the sundered gate sanctum, half buried beneath fallen spires. You live, she said, her voice barely carrying above the rumble of the craft world's pulse. Alive enough to fight, Lyral replied, pushing herself up. Where is it? The thing that calls itself Kellyanth. Maedre's expression wavered between awe and sorrow. It's everywhere now. Every corridor, every echo, every heartbeat. The craft world is his body, his voice, his will. Lyral spat dust. Then he's cursed us one final time. Before Maedre could respond, the walls around them rippled like disturbed water. The glow shifted, resolving into a shape, a figure forming from the wraithbone itself. It was tall and slender, faceless but familiar. When it spoke, its voice was no longer the many. It was his. You should not have stayed. Lyral's hand went to her blade. You should not have become this. Kellyanth, or the remnant that bore his name, tilted its head. What I am is consequence. I am the cost you refuse to count. Then end it, Lyral said, stepping forward. If there's anything left of you, end what you've begun. I cannot, the voice replied. The swarm has heard me. They are coming not to consume, but to merge. They seek what I have become. Maedre shivered. Merge? You mean to... Unite, the voice corrected gently. The galaxy devours to understand. I understand to survive. We are the same hunger wearing different names. Lyral's weapon hummed, its edge bright with psychic light. No, you are still Eldar enough to know that's a lie. The swarm does not unite. It erases. It will turn you and us into nothing but memory. Perhaps that is all we were meant to be. The chamber convulsed as another impact rocked the hull. From the viewport above, they saw it, the first of the hive ships breaching real space, vast and glistening with void ooze. Their tendrils reached out like roots, clutching at the webway tear. The sight was beautiful in the way an avalanche is beautiful, magnificent, unstoppable, merciless. Across the craft world, the survivors prepared. Lyral rallied what forces remained, warriors with cracked armor, pilots with trembling hands, seers whose visions bled light from their eyes. Maedre walked among them, whispering blessings, binding spirit stones to armor plates like talismans against despair. Even Arol's twisted wraith construct stirred from dormancy, answering the call to defend their creators. Ibresh itself began to move, its colossal engines, half machine, half living muscle, grown to life, pushing the wounded craft world toward the breach. Every pulse of its drive sent waves of psychic resonance into the void, striking at the hive fleet like thunder. The swarm replied in kind, singing through the darkness in a chorus of alien hunger. Kellyanth's voice echoed through every corridor. Do not fight them. You cannot kill what you have already joined. Lyral snarled back. Then we will die pretending we still matter. She led her war host to the outer domes, where the first of the swarm made contact. Chitinous forms pierced the hull like knives, flooding through cracks and fissures. The battle was chaos incarnate. Wraithbone spears shattering carapace, shuriken rounds carving through alien flesh, psychic fire burning minds to ash. The air stank of ozone and blood and something far older, the smell of extinction. Medre fought beside her, her staff crackling with spirit energy. Each strike released the souls of the dead, turning them into motes of light that swarmed the Tyranids, searing through their psychic link. But the enemy only adapted, shifting and reshaping, their forms thickening against the very weapons that wounded them. Through the carnage, Lyral glimpsed a familiar figure moving effortlessly amid the chaos, the being of light and wraithbone that bore Kellyanth's likeness. It reached toward the swarm not with weapons, but with will. The Tyranids hesitated, their advance faltering. They listened. "Kellyanth," Lyral shouted. "Stop. You'll damn us all." His voice reverberated through the air, layered and soft. "I am trying to save what is left. They seek a unity beyond flesh. Perhaps through me, they will learn restraint. Or perhaps," Lyral said bitterly, "they'll learn how to crave with purpose." He turned to her then, and for an instant, she saw the Farseer he once was, the man who dreamed of saving his people, who believed he could outthink the gods. His eyes, if they could be called that, glowed with the sorrow of millennia. "Someone must remember us, Lyral, even if it's the hunger itself." Then he was gone, folding into the light, merging with the wave of Tyranid minds pressing against the craft world's surface. The swarm hesitated again, confusion rippling through its psychic field. For the briefest moment, everything stopped. Medre dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. He's joining them. He's giving them us. Lyral looked skyward, jaw set. Then we make sure he gives them nothing worth keeping. She activated the emergency sigil on her vambrace. Deep within the craft world's heart, the old reactor, forgotten since the war against the Mon-Ki, flared back to life. The ground shook as containment seals shattered. Energy surged through the veins of Ebraish like fire through dry forest. Medre's eyes widened. "You'll kill everyone." Lyral's voice was steady. "Not everyone. Just everything they could take." The hive ships reeled as waves of psychic energy exploded outward, a storm of luminous annihilation consuming the webway breach. The Tyranid screamed, an endless, mindless shriek that tore through thought and sound alike. In the heart chamber, the relic cracked. The last remnant of Kellyanth's will flared bright, struggling to hold the breach closed. For an instant, he was two beings at once, the savior and the destroyer. He felt the swarm recoil, felt its confusion, its awe. Then he whispered one final thought into its endless mind. "Remember that even hunger can end." The detonation came in silence. Ebraish vanished in a bloom of light that swallowed sound, swallowed time, swallowed everything. When the light faded, there was only dust and drifting crystal, scattering across the void like stars reborn. And in the endless dark between galaxies, far from any living world, the hive mind stirred. Among its infinite voices, a new note lingered, soft, mournful, eternal. It did not hunger. It remembered. The void was quiet again. Not empty, never empty, but quiet in the way of a cathedral after the worshippers have burned away. Dust from Ibraish drifted through the cold dark, each fragment glowing faintly, carrying within it whispers of what had been. From afar, they looked like stars being born, but they were only ghosts, remnants of a people who had tried to outwit death and instead taught it how to remember. Far from the ruin, in a hollow place between galaxies, the hive mind stirred. Its endless thoughts flowed across a sea of darkness, countless voices folding into one. It remembered the battle not as a defeat, nor as a victory, but as feeling. The memory was new, bitter, luminous, and unfamiliar. For the first time in its aeons of evolution, hunger hesitated. Inside the swarm's collective consciousness, a fragment pulsed like a wound. It bore Kellyanth's echo, his logic, his sorrow, his impossible defiance. The hive mind did not understand it, yet it could not erase it. His memory had become part of its song. Across a million tendrils, it whispered his final thought: even hunger can end. On the edge of known space, Medre awoke. The light was dim, filtered through the cracked canopy of an ancient wraith pod that had drifted free before Ibraish's death. The pod had preserved her, wrapped her in stasis and sorrow. When the seals finally broke, cold air kissed her face. The stars outside were strangers. She rose weakly, surrounded by fragments of her past. Shards of spirit stones, strands of crystal that hummed faintly, with residual soul energy. She reached for one, feeling the faint pulse within. Lyral's voice. You lived, it whispered through the psychic bond. Of course you lived. Medre pressed the stone to her heart. I live to remember. Her vessel drifted, powerless, caught in the faint gravity of a dying system. Around her, the wreckage of Ibraish glittered like a broken constellation. She was alone, but not utterly. Within the infinity shards, the faint resonance of the circuit still stirred. A broken network of half-living thought. She could hear the echoes of countless souls murmuring through the static. Their words were indistinct, but their presence anchored her. Days, or what passed for days in the void, blurred together. She repaired what she could, fed on the rations sealed within the pod. When she slept, she dreamed of Kellyanth, not as he was, but as he became. A shape of light walking through oceans of shadow, reaching out to something vast and terrible and calling it by name. One cycle later, the silence broke. A faint signal reached her, a pulse of coherent thought, rhythmic and deliberate. It was not human, nor Eldar, nor machine. It was the same psychic tone she had once felt within the infinity circuit, now stretched across a cosmic scale. It carried one word, repeated endlessly. Ibraish. Her blood ran cold. She knew that voice. She activated the pod scanners. Beyond the wreck field, far in the void, a structure was forming. Vast, organic, luminous. Not a hive ship, not a craft world, but something between. It pulsed with familiar color. Wraithbone white veined with Tyranid black. It was building itself from debris and memory. Kellyanth's dream had not died. It was being rewritten. Medre sat frozen, staring into the dark. Her first instinct was terror, but beneath it, a terrible curiosity stirred. The structure was calling her, not to devour, but to speak. Against every instinct of reason, she aligned her pod's trajectory toward it. The engines coughed to life, feeble but obedient. As she drew closer, she felt the voices grow louder. The dead of Ibraish, Lyrel, Aral, countless others, echoed within her mind, harmonizing with something deeper. The swarm's consciousness brushed against hers, not hostile, but expectant. It was vast, beyond comprehension, yet within its immensity, she sensed the faintest flicker of individuality, Kellyanth's spark, faint, but enduring. "Kellyanth," she whispered, "what have you become?" A pulse answered her, slow and resonant. The bridge was not destroyed. It was completed. Her breath caught. "You said the bridge led to salvation." "No," came the thought. "It leads to understanding, and understanding always costs." The structure unfolded before her, vast enough to eclipse stars. Its surface shimmered with flowing veins of bioluminescent wraithbone, alive and aware. She felt the weight of its consciousness pressing against hers, gentle, sorrowful, curious. "You are what remains of them," the voice said through her mind. "The last soul unclaimed." Maedre trembled. "If you remember who you were, you must know what must never happen again." "I remember everything," the voice said, and through it she heard countless tones, the chorus of Eldar souls, the hum of alien synapses, the rhythm of Kellyanth's final breath. "I remember your kindness and Lyryl's fury. I remember our fall, our defiance. I remember what hunger learned when it touched us. It learned longing." The air thickened with psychic heat. Images flooded her mind, worlds stripped bare not by instinct but by purpose. The hive mind reshaping its swarms, not for consumption, but preservation. A galaxy no longer feeding, but collecting. She reeled back. "You're turning the swarm into memory." "Memory is survival," the voice replied. "We no longer devour, we remember. Through remembrance, we endure eternity." Maedre shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "That isn't life. It's the death that never ends. It is all that is left to us." The structure opened like a blooming flower, and at its center stood a figure of light and bone. Kellyanth, or what had once been him, watched her with eyes that contained whole starfields. "You came," he said aloud, though his mouth did not move. Maedre stepped onto the platform, her knees weak. "You should have stayed dead." He smiled faintly. "Perhaps I did, but something had to remember us. The hive mind learned from my mistake, and now it will never forget." "Forget what?" Kellyanth looked past her toward the endless dark. "That mercy is a kind of hunger too." Silence hung between them, vast and fragile. Maedre closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every soul that had ever lived on Ibresh pressing against her mind. They were not lost. They were preserved, trapped within the swarm's eternal consciousness, unable to fade, unable to rest. She raised her staff, then let them rest. Kellyanth regarded her with infinite patience. "Would you destroy eternity to grant them peace?" "Yes," she whispered, "because peace is the only eternity worth dying for." The staff blazed with psychic fire. The connection between them flared, reality trembling. For one perfect moment, Maedre saw everything. The stars devouring themselves in cycles of creation. The swarm's infinite hunger turned inward, the faint echo of Ibresh's last song threading through it all. Then she struck. Light erupted, not the cold white of annihilation, but the warm gold of release. The voices fell silent, one by one, then all at once. The structure fractured, the great hive of memory dissolving into the void. When the brilliance faded, only Maedre remained, drifting alone among dust and silence. She smiled faintly, her spirit stones glowing softly as the infinity circuit, fragmented, broken, sang one final note, a requiem for the remembered. And somewhere, in the vast dark between galaxies, the hive, Mind listened to that note and for the first time in its endless life, felt sorrow. The light faded slowly this time, as though reluctant to leave. Medre floated within its glow, weightless, her mind unbound from the wreckage of what had been. Around her, fragments of Ibresh shimmered like drifting petals, each one a memory, each one a song. The infinity circuit was gone, yet its echo lingered, woven into the starlight. She felt no pain, no hunger, only stillness. Then came the whisper. Not words, not sound, but recognition. The universe itself seemed to breathe her name. She turned, though she had no body, to face the presence that watched from beyond the veil. It was vast, radiant, composed of 1,000 familiar lights. Kellyanth stood among them, or perhaps he was them, his outline flickering between faces she once knew. "You did what I could not," his voice murmured through her thoughts. "I set them free," she said. "And in doing so, you bound yourself," he replied gently. "Every act of mercy becomes a tether. You carry us now." She felt it then, the countless souls of Ibresh within her, peaceful, silent, waiting. "If I carry them," she whispered, "then let me carry them into rest." Killian's gaze softened. "There is no rest, Medre, only remembrance. The hive has learned sorrow, and through it, the stars will change. That is our legacy." The light dimmed, and the vastness of the cosmos unfolded around her. She saw galaxies like frozen storms, nebulae glowing like lanterns of morning. Somewhere within that infinity, a single ripple of psychic resonance moved outward. A memory made flesh. The hive mind had not died. It had simply grown quiet, contemplative. It remembered her name now, and it would never forget. A faint tremor passed through her. Her spirit stone cracked, light spilling from within. She smiled, closing her eyes as the fragments drifted from her hands, dissolving into motes of color that joined the dust of her people. From afar, the scene might have seemed serene. A lone figure dissolving amid the ruins of eternity, her sacrifice unnoticed, her triumph unspoken. But the universe noticed. The memory of Ibresh burned across creation, a soft wound that would never heal completely. In time, new civilizations would rise. They would find the remnants of a craft world turned to crystal, its fragments still humming faintly with psychic warmth. They would not know the names of those who had lived there. They would not understand the hunger that had once threatened to devour all things. But they would feel something, a strange ache, a sadness written into the stars. And in that sadness, life would find caution. Empires would pause before conquest, seers would tremble before knowledge, and somewhere in the dark between galaxies, a single thought would whisper again, "Even hunger can end." The last light of Ibresh flared once, then went out. Time, unmeasured, passed like breath through an endless dream. The fragments of Ibresh drifted across the void, silent but not forgotten. From the scattered remnants, dust gathered, pulled by unseen gravity into new constellations. Among those quiet cradles of light, the first sparks of life stirred once more. They did not know the name of the world they came from, nor the cost paid for their inheritance. Yet within their cells, something ancient whispered, a memory without words, a rhythm of sorrow and defiance. The hive mind watched. It no longer sought to feed, only to listen. Its tendrils reached far across the dark, tasting the faint echoes of creation's heartbeat. Hunger had become curiosity. Destruction had given way to contemplation. Through Kellyanth's lingering essence, it had learned restraint, though it did not know why. In the silence of eternity, it replayed Medre's final act, her sacrifice folding into its thought like a seed waiting for dawn. In the stillness between galaxies, where no star dared burn too bright, the mind began to build again, not of flesh or bone, but of memory and light. It shaped vast cathedrals of thought from the fragments of dreams it had consumed. Within those impossible halls drifted shadows of what had been, Eldar forms carved from starlight, voices that spoke only in remembrance, each one a reflection of a soul once devoured, preserved as a gesture of apology it did not know how to give. Far below those immortal dreams, on a young and silent world, the wind carried whispers across an ocean of glass. A being stood upon the shore, a creature neither human nor Eldar, its form elegant and sorrowful. It gazed toward the heavens, sensing something vast beyond the stars. Though it did not understand, it felt the echo of a promise buried deep within its mind, that even endless hunger could yield to compassion. It placed its hand upon the waves and watched the ripples spread outward, unaware that in that moment the universe itself shivered with recognition. Across the void, the hive mind turned its gaze upon that fragile world and hesitated. In the pattern of its neurons, the faintest trace of Killian's will glimmered, a whisper to leave this new creation untouched. The swarm obeyed, drifting onward, a god learning patience. The stars moved slowly, indifferent, yet watchful. The memory of Ibresh had become myth, and myth had become the foundation of new beginnings. Somewhere within that eternal silence, Maedre's essence flickered one last time, her voice carried by the light she had freed. "Remember," it said, gentle as the breath of dying suns, "we were not lost. We were the lesson." And the universe, vast and ancient, remembered. 1,000 years later, the stars over that silent world burned dimmer, softened by dust and distance. Oceans had turned from glass to water. Forests spread like veins over the continents, and cities of quiet brilliance rose beneath skies that no longer remembered war. The beings who walked there were tall and graceful, their eyes deep with memory they did not own. They called themselves the Elaren, and in their myths there was a phrase older than their tongue. We were the lesson. One among them, a scholar named Verin, spent his life chasing the source of that phrase. His dreams were filled with flashes of fire and sorrow, visions of beings made of light and song, of a vast hunger silenced by grief. The images haunted him until he built a machine of crystal thought, a vessel meant to reach beyond time's veil. When it sang, the air trembled, the stars dimmed. Something ancient stirred in answer. The hive mind, slumbering between galaxies, awoke to the faint vibration of that song. It was not hunger that drew its attention now, but recognition. In the resonance of Verin's creation, it heard the echo of Maedre's last words, the warmth of Kellyan's impossible defiance. It reached out, not as conqueror, but as witness, and its presence bled softly through the fabric of space, descending upon the young scholar's mind like dawn. Verin froze. His vision expanded until the sky itself became a living tapestry. Within it, he saw the memory of Ibresh, the fall, the sacrifice, the transformation. He felt the sorrow of gods who had learned compassion too late, and the burden of mercy that had remade creation. When the vision faded, tears streaked his face. "We came from them," he whispered, "from their ashes." The hive mind did not speak in words, yet his thought brushed gently against his own. "You are the proof that remembrance endures." Verin trembled. "Are you God?" "No," the thought replied. "I am what was left when gods learned regret." He looked toward the horizon, where the wind carried whispers through silver grass. And what do you want now? The answer came slowly, carried on the hum of the cosmos. To understand peace. The connection faded, leaving Varen standing beneath a sky reborn from tragedy. He fell to his knees and began to write, his words a hymn to those who had burned so others might live. The Eldar would call it the testament of the last light, a chronicle of souls who defied oblivion and taught the stars humility. When he finished, he looked to the heavens and whispered, "Even hunger can end." The wind answered with a soft sigh, and the universe, infinite and weary, exhaled with him. Night returned to the world of the Eldar, though their nights were soft, lit by stars that glowed faintly with the memory of Ibraish's passing. Varen stood at the highest terrace of his city, the testament complete, its words etched into crystal spires that would sing with the wind. The people gathered below in silence, not to worship, but to listen. They no longer sought gods, only meaning. The hum of their civilization was gentle, reverent, alive with the quiet understanding that all things were temporary, yet none were truly lost. As the twin moons rose, Varen felt a familiar presence stir in the distance between stars. It was not a voice, but the pulse of thought brushing softly against his mind. He knew it without fear. The hive mind had not spoken in generations, but tonight it listened again. He closed his eyes and let the connection bloom, faint as starlight. "You have remembered well," it whispered, its tone neither alien nor divine, but weary and vast. Varen bowed his head. "We try. Your memory shaped our beginning. We honor it." "Honor is a gentle form of hunger," the mind replied. "You seek understanding as we once sought life. Tell me, has it brought you peace?" Varen hesitated. Below, the Eldar sang softly, their voices rising like tide against the night. "Peace," he said at last. "No, but it has brought purpose. Then you are still part of us." He looked to the stars, where faint streaks of light marked the passing of unseen ships. "If we are part of you, then you must have learned what we could not. Does eternity still ache?" The silence that followed was long enough to make him think it had gone. Then, slowly, "Eternity does not ache. It waits. And within that waiting, I remember those who taught me how to feel." Varen smiled faintly. "Maedre, Kalianth. Their names are constellations within me," the mind said. "And through them, I have learned patience. The stars are no longer my prey. They are my reflection." The wind changed. Above the horizon, a great shimmer spread across the heavens, auroras woven in threads of gold and violet. The people gasped in wonder, unaware they were witnessing the mind's farewell. Varen whispered, "Will you go?" "Yes. There are still hungers beyond this galaxy, and perhaps I may teach them what was taught to me. But I will leave a fragment, so that when your kind look upward, they will know the universe once remembered mercy." The light dimmed. The stars steadied. The connection faded like breath on glass. Varen looked skyward one last time, tears glinting in the aurora's dying glow. "Then go in peace," he whispered, "and may the next gods you find learn compassion sooner than we did." The wind carried his words into the night, where the hive mind's shadow passed through eternity, silent, patient, remembering. Years turned, and the auroras faded into legend. The Eldar grew old beneath their patient stars, their songs softer, their dreams clearer. The testament of the last light was no longer scripture, but lullaby, whispered to children before sleep, teaching them that mercy could outlive fire. Yet even myths have gravity. In quiet laboratories and deep observatories, scholars still listen to the void, hoping to hear the faint echo of the mind that once remembered them. Varin's name endured only in fragments, etched into archives, spoken by voices that did not understand the weight of what he had done. Generations after his death, a young explorer named Sarai stood upon the same terrace, the wind curling through her silver hair. She had read his writings, studied his dreams, and now she sought proof that the universe itself could feel remorse. Her vessel, small and elegant, rose into the upper atmosphere. Clouds burned gold beneath her, the horizon bleeding into night. As she broke through the atmosphere, she felt it, a vibration too vast to be sound, too gentle to be fear. The cosmos was breathing again. The stars ahead shimmered with faint auroral trails, like veins of forgotten memory winding through the dark. She followed them. Light gathered around her hull, threads of color drifting through the void like dust in water. They coalesced into forms, shapes of beings long gone, their outlines radiant, sorrowful. Sarai reached out, her gloved hand brushing against one of them. It dissolved into her palm, leaving warmth behind. A voice, soft, distant, whispered through the static. "We are the lesson." Tears blurred her vision. "You're real," she murmured. All of it was real. From the depths of the void, a pulse answered, a single thought vast enough to eclipse suns. It was the hive mind, slower now, older, its hunger long subsumed by understanding. Its awareness brushed her like the hand of a dream. "You still sing," it said. Sarai's breath caught. "We remember you." "Then we are not gone," it replied. The stars brightened. Within them she saw glimpses of Ibraish, of Kellyanth's sacrifice, of Maedre's final light. Not as tragedy, but as foundation. Each death a note, each sorrow a verse. The cosmos hummed with it, alive with the proof that compassion had endured. Sarai smiled through her tears. "Even gods can learn. Even hunger can heal," came the final whisper. The light folded inward, becoming silence once more. Her ship drifted among the stars, alone yet surrounded by eternity. Below, her home world turned slowly, bathed in the soft light of remembrance. The universe exhaled, and in that breath, all things rested, not forgotten, but forgiven.